That's a painful reality, isn't it? But I came to tell you today, betrayal is part of the process. It's part of destiny. And if you don't understand betrayal, you will never fulfill your assignment. Look at the greatest men and women in history. They were all betrayed. Joseph, sold by his own brothers. David, hunted by the very king he served. Jesus, handed over by one of his own disciples. Why? Because betrayal is the test before the throne. Listen to me. Betrayal doesn't come from strangers. It comes from those closest to you, the ones you trusted, the ones you loved. Because only people who are close enough can stab you in the back. If an enemy speaks against you, it's expected. But when your own family turns against you, it cuts deeper than any sword. But here's the key. Betrayal is a signal, not a setback. When people betray you, it means God is shifting your season. Joseph had to be betrayed to reach the palace. Jesus had to be betrayed to fulfill his mission. What if I told you that the betrayal you're crying over is actually God's transportation to your destiny? Stop mourning over who left you. Stop wasting time trying to prove yourself to people who don't believe in you. The same ones who rejected you today will have to witness your rise tomorrow. Because when God has his hand on your life, no betrayal can cancel your assignment. Betrayal is one of the most painful experiences in life. It cuts deep not because of what was done, but because of who did it. It is not the betrayal of strangers that breaks you. It is the betrayal of those you trusted, those you called family, those you thought would stand with you no matter what. But I came to tell you today, betrayal is not the end of your story. It is part of your destiny. Every great person in history had to pass through the fire of betrayal before stepping into their purpose. You cannot reach where God is taking you without facing the test of betrayal. Look at Joseph. His own brothers threw him in a pit, sold him into slavery, and left him for dead. Not strangers, not enemies, his own flesh and blood. But what they meant for evil, God was using for good. Because betrayal is a process, and if you don't understand the process, you will misinterpret the pain. Some of you are crying over who betrayed you. You are asking, why did they do this to me? How could they turn against me? But I want you to hear me. Betrayal is not a curse, it is a promotion in disguise. You were praying for God to take you to the next level, but you didn't realize that betrayal is often the vehicle that gets you there. Joseph could never have ruled Egypt from his father's house. He had to be betrayed, he had to be sold, he had to be thrown into a pit, because the pit was the door to the palace. Some of you are stuck in your pain because you don't understand the purpose of betrayal. You are so focused on what they did that you don't see what God is doing. You are so busy crying over who left you that you don't see where God is taking you. But I need you to wipe your tears and get up. That betrayal did not break you, it positioned you. That rejection did not destroy you, it redirected you. Because when people push you away, God is pulling you towards something greater. Jesus was betrayed by one of his own disciples, someone who walked with him, ate with him, prayed with him. Judas was not an outsider, he was an insider. He was in the circle. But without Judas, there would be no cross, and without the cross, there would be no salvation. What if I told you that the person who betrayed you was actually part of God's plan? What if I told you that what they meant to destroy you is actually what God is using to elevate you? Stop fighting what God is using to move you forward. Stop trying to hold on to people who have already left your destiny. Some betrayals had to happen because if they had stayed, you would have settled. If they had stayed, you would have never stepped into your purpose. God allowed it because he knew you were too loyal to let go on your own. But listen to me, the betrayal was a test. And the test is not about them, it's about you. Will you hold on to bitterness, or will you trust God's plan? Will you waste your time chasing after people who rejected you, or will you step boldly into the future God has prepared for you? Joseph never went back to his brothers to ask, why did you do this to me? He didn't waste time seeking closure. When they saw him again, he was not in the pit, he was on the throne. The best response to betrayal is success. The best revenge is to become everything they said you would never be. So I don't know who betrayed you. I don't know who turned their back on you. But I do know this. If they betrayed you, it's because they were never meant to go where God is taking you. Forgive them, but don't follow them. Bless them, but don't beg them. Because what God has for you is greater than who left you. Betrayal never comes from strangers. It always comes from those closest to you, family, friends, people you trusted, people you believed would stand with you. A stranger cannot betray you because betrayal requires trust. It requires closeness. It requires relationship. And that is why betrayal is so painful, because it is always personal. Many of you have been wounded not by enemies, but by your own, by those who should have protected you, by those who should have covered you. But I came to tell you today, betrayal is not the end. It is a revelation. It reveals who truly belongs in your future and who was only assigned to a chapter of your life. Look at Joseph. His own brothers, the ones he grew up with, the ones he ate with, the ones he shared his dreams with, they were the ones who threw him into the pit. It wasn't strangers. It wasn't outsiders. It was his own blood. Why? Because only people close to you can carry the power to hurt you that deeply. David was not betrayed by a foreigner. He was betrayed by Saul, a man he served faithfully, a man he honored, a man he fought for. Saul should have been his mentor, his protector, but instead Saul became his greatest enemy. The one David defended was the same one who tried to kill him. And then there's Jesus, the Son of God, the Messiah, the Savior of the world. He was not betrayed by a Roman soldier. He was not betrayed by a Pharisee. He was betrayed by Judas, one of his own disciples. Judas walked with him, ate with him, saw his miracles, heard his teachings. But the same man who kissed him on the cheek was the same man who sold him for 30 pieces of silver. Why? Because betrayal requires proximity. It comes from people who know you, people you opened your heart to, people you trusted. And sometimes the greatest pain is not what they did, but the fact that it was them who did it. But listen to me. You cannot be destroyed by betrayal unless you give it power. Betrayal is painful, but it is not final. Joseph's brothers betrayed him, but they could not stop God's plan. Saul hunted David, but he could not take the throne that God had already assigned. Judas sold Jesus, but the cross was already part of the plan. So don't let betrayal break you. It is just a test. Some of you are sitting in bitterness. You're asking, how could they do this to me? You are replaying the hurt over and over in your mind, but I need you to hear me. Stop giving energy to what God has already removed. Some betrayals had to happen, not because of who they are, but because of who you are becoming. God is taking you somewhere, and not everyone can go with you. Some people had to betray you so you could release them. Some people had to reject you so you could step into the place God prepared for you. If they could walk away, it means they were never meant to stay. Jesus didn't chase Judas. Joseph didn't go back to his brothers to ask for closure. David didn't waste time trying to convince Saul to love him. Stop running after people who walked away. Stop trying to fix what God allowed to break, because your destiny is too important to be held hostage by betrayal. The ones who betrayed you thought they were burying you, but they didn't know you were a seed. And a seed that is buried is not dead, it is being positioned for growth. So lift up your head, let them go, because what God has for you is greater than who left you. Betrayal is painful, but it is not a setback, it is a signal. A signal that something is shifting. A sign that your season is changing, a confirmation that God is about to do something new in your life. But if you do not recognize betrayal for what it is, you will waste time mourning what was meant to move you forward. Some of you are crying over people who left you, over family members who turned against you, over friends who walked away. You are asking, why did this happen to me? But I need you to understand something. Betrayal is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of a new chapter. If you are being betrayed, it means you are closer to your destiny than you think. Look at Joseph. When his brothers betrayed him, he didn't realize that their betrayal was the first step toward his throne. If they had never thrown him into the pit, he would have never ended up in Egypt. If he had never been sold, he would have never entered Pharaoh's palace. And if he had never entered the palace, he would have never saved an entire nation. What they meant for harm, God used for good. What if I told you that the betrayal you are crying over is actually the answer to your prayer? You ask God to take you higher. You ask God to enlarge your territory. You ask God to position you for greater things. But what you did not realize is that before every promotion, there is always a betrayal. Jesus could not get to the cross without Judas. Joseph could not get to the throne without his brothers. David could not become king without Saul hunting him. Because betrayal is part of the process. You are so focused on what they did that you don't see what God is doing. You are so busy asking why they left that you don't see where God is taking you. But I need you to hear me. Betrayal is not rejection, it is redirection. It is not a curse, it is confirmation. The very people who try to destroy you are unknowingly pushing you into your destiny. But here's the key. You must stop fighting for what God is trying to remove. Some of you are trying to hold on to people God has already cut off. You are trying to fix relationships that were never meant to last. You are crying over doors that were never meant to stay open. But listen to me. If they could betray you, it means their time in your life is over. Let them go. Joseph never ran after his brothers to ask why. Jesus never tried to convince Judas to stay. David never wasted time proving himself to Saul, because people's betrayal cannot cancel God's promise. What God has planned for you does not depend on their loyalty. It depends on his purpose. You may feel like you lost something, but I declare to you today, you didn't lose anything. You gained clarity. Betrayal exposes who is truly for you. It removes distractions. It forces you to rely on God alone. And when you pass this test, when you stop trying to fight for people who left, when you stop crying over what you cannot change, you will step into the place God has prepared for you. So wipe your tears, stop looking back, let them go. Because what God has for you is greater than who left you. Betrayal is painful, but it is not random. It is not an accident. It is not without purpose. God uses betrayal as transportation to your destiny. The very thing you thought would break you is the thing God is using to position you. The very people who turned against you are the ones unknowingly pushing you into your next season. But if you don't recognize the purpose of betrayal, you will spend your life angry at the people who were actually part of God's plan. Joseph did not know that when his brothers threw him into the pit, they were not burying him, they were launching him. He did not know that when they sold him into slavery, they were not ending his dream, they were delivering him to the place where the dream would come true. What they meant for evil, God turned for good. Some of you have been betrayed, and you are asking, why did this happen to me? Why did they turn against me? But I need you to hear me. If they betrayed you, it means they were part of the process. You were praying for God to take you higher, and you didn't realize that betrayal is often the transportation to the next level. Look at Jesus. He knew Judas would betray him. He knew it was coming, but he never stopped him. He never tried to prevent it, because without Judas, there would be no cross. And without the cross, there would be no salvation. Judas thought he was destroying Jesus, but he was actually pushing him into his greatest purpose. God will use even your enemies to fulfill his plan. He will take the very people who tried to destroy you and make them the reason you rise. He will take the pain they caused you and turn it into the foundation of your future. That is why you must stop crying over who betrayed you. You are mourning what was actually part of your breakthrough. If Joseph's brothers had never betrayed him, he would have stayed in his father's house. He would have never reached Pharaoh's palace. He would have never ruled Egypt. The betrayal was necessary. Some betrayals had to happen not because God wanted you to suffer, but because he needed to move you. He knew you were too loyal to leave on your own, so he allowed them to push you out. Stop fighting what God is using to transport you. Stop trying to hold on to people God is removing. Stop trying to go back to what he has already shut down. You are trying to revive something that was never meant to survive. If they betrayed you, it means their role in your story is over. Joseph never went back to his brothers to ask for closure. Jesus never went back to Judas to ask why, because they understood that betrayal is not an ending, it is a transition. The people who hurt you may have meant it for evil, but they do not have the final say. God is still in control. So lift up your head. Stop looking back. Let them go. Because what God has for you is greater than who left you. Forgiveness is not for them, it is for you. When people betray you, the natural response is to hold on to the pain, to rehearse what they did, to carry the weight of bitterness. But I need you to hear me today. You cannot move forward while holding on to what hurt you. Betrayal is one of the deepest wounds because it comes from those closest to you. It comes from the people you trusted, the ones you loved, the ones you thought would stand by your side. But I came to tell you betrayal is not the end. It is a test. And the test is not about them. It is about you. Joseph had every reason to hate his brothers. They threw him into a pit, sold him into slavery, and left him for dead. But years later, when he saw them again, he did not seek revenge. He did not hold on to bitterness. He forgave them. Because Joseph understood something powerful. Forgiveness does not excuse the betrayal, but it frees you from its power. Some of you have been holding on to what they did for too long. You are still replaying the betrayal in your mind, still carrying the pain in your heart. But let me ask you, how can you reach for the future if your hands are still full of the past? Jesus was betrayed by Judas, abandoned by his disciples, denied by Peter. He had every reason to hold on to the hurt. But even as he hung on the cross, he said, Father, forgive them. He understood that unforgiveness is a prison, and if you refuse to let go, you are the one who stays trapped. But listen to me, forgiving them does not mean following them. Just because you release the pain does not mean you have to welcome them back into your life. Forgiveness is given, but trust is earned. Some of you are trying to rebuild relationships that God allowed to break. Some of you are chasing after people who were only meant to be in one chapter of your story. Joseph forgave his brothers, but he did not return to live with them. Jesus forgave Judas, but he did not stop him from leaving. Because forgiveness is not about restoring the past, it is about releasing yourself into the future. And stop waiting for an apology. Stop expecting them to make it right. Some people will never say sorry, and even if they do, it will not undo what happened. You don't need that apology to be healed. You don't need that regret to move forward. Your future is not in their hands, it is in God's hands. The betrayal hurt, but it did not break you. The rejection stung, but it did not stop you. So wipe your tears, release the bitterness, let it go. Because what God has for you is greater than who left you. Sometimes betrayal feels like the end. It feels like everything you built, everything you trusted has fallen apart. But I need you to understand something. What God has for you is greater than who left you. The people who walked away, the family members who turned against you, the friends who betrayed you, they were never meant to stay for the next chapter of your life. Joseph's brothers thought they were destroying his future when they threw him into the pit. They thought they were ending his dream when they sold him into slavery. But what they didn't know was that God had already written a different ending. The betrayal didn't cancel the promise. The rejection didn't change God's plan. If anything, it positioned him for something greater. Some of you have been crying over people who left. You've been mourning relationships that ended, friendships that fell apart, family members who turned their backs on you. But I came to tell you, stop weeping over who walked away. If they could leave, it means their part in your story is over. Jesus didn't beg Judas to stay. He didn't try to convince him to change his mind. Because Judas was never meant to stay beyond his assignment. And some of you need to realize that the people who betrayed you were only assigned to a season, not your destiny. If they could betray you, it means they were never truly for you. David had to leave Saul behind in order to become king. Joseph had to leave his brothers in order to rule Egypt. Jesus had to endure betrayal in order to fulfill his purpose. You cannot step into your future while clinging to the past. You may have lost people, but you have not lost purpose. You may have been abandoned, but you are not alone. God is still writing your story, and the next chapter is greater than what you left behind. So lift your head, dry your tears, let them go, because what God has for you is greater than who left you. My friend, betrayal is painful, but it is not the end. It is a transition, a test, a revelation, and ultimately a setup for something greater. The people who walked away, the ones who turned against you, the ones you thought would stand by your side but didn't, let them go. Their betrayal did not cancel your destiny. Their rejection did not remove God's plan for your life. You must understand that betrayal is not about who left, it's about who remains. It's about who you become in the process. Will you let the pain break you, or will you allow it to build you? Will you stay stuck in bitterness, or will you move forward in purpose? Because your future is not behind you. Your calling is not connected to those who betrayed you. Your destiny is ahead, and it is greater than anything you have lost. So forgive, release, let go, not for them, but for you. Don't waste another moment grieving what God has already removed. Focus on what is ahead, because what is coming is far greater than what is gone. I declare that you will rise above every betrayal. You will overcome every attack. You will not be broken by what they did. You will walk in your purpose. You will step into everything God has for you, and one day you will look back and realize that what hurt you the most actually helped you the most. Stay strong. Keep moving forward. Your best days are still ahead. Good luck, and thank you.